Hello students, I am Prithviraj Singh Chauhan and I'll be explaining you the Score Booster series Mock 3 test analysis, and we'll be discussing all the passages which come under the general affairs or general studies, right, which you call current affairs. Now, although the passages, we generally have 7 passages as our set of questions, but I'll be taking the important ones first, important in terms of those passages which require more explanation, more in-depth analysis, right? So I'll be starting with those passages which would be requiring more in-depth analysis and with more explanation, right? So in the preferential order, I would be starting with passage 2, which talks about the Election Rules Amendment Bill 2021, and then I'll talk about a parliament, and in this way I'll complete all the analysis of the passages in this mock. Now the passage that you can see on the board is with regard to the election amendment bill, which was there proposed in the month of December 2021. And if you have, when you attempted this question and when you read this question, the first thing that must have came to your mind would be the election amendment bill of 2021, right? And in this bill, the government, because it is still a bill, it has not become an act, the government, tried to, the basic provision of this bill is the interlinking of the electoral list of the voters with the Aadhaar ID, right? And that is the whole issue of controversy, right? So it has been gone through so much of controversy, and therefore this passage was being asked, a very important passage, and the questions following them, right? I would like to explain you before I try attempting those questions and explaining those questions to you. Now, the bill which is there in the question is Election Amendment Bill 2021. Now, and in this bill, the voter ID, which is your document for the identification of your election ID, and your name is generally being found in the electoral list, right? So the electoral roll and the voter ID would be linked with the Aadhaar. Now the whole issue or the basic tenet of this bill is linking your voter ID with the Aadhaar, right? Now, and it has led to so many repercussions, and many deliberations have been come out because of this linkages. Because you all know that Supreme Court in 2015 has clearly said that Aadhaar is not mandatory document, and therefore government trying to link your voter ID or your electoral details, something also called as electoral voter list, electoral roll, with Aadhaar, actually lends the government to various controversies. Now we must understand that elections in India is being regulated by two, I would say, provisions. The first is the Article 324 of the Indian Constitution, which gives the constitutional authority to the Election Commission of India. The chief election conducting authority of India is Election Commission of India, and it derives its constitutional powers from Article 324. Plus, there is also a Representation of People's Act, which is a statute formed, passed by the Indian Parliament. So, Election Commission of India, or elections, are being conducted through two provisions, Article 324 and Representation of People's Act. Now, we also must keep in mind that the right to vote is a legal right, and you get this from Article 326, right? That means the two articles post 324, you will find Article 326. So right to vote is coming from Article 326, right? And we also know that the age The right age though, or the minimum age to vote was earlier 21 years, and it was later being reduced to 18 years. Now every citizen of the country who is 18 years of age is eligible for vote, is eligible to vote in the elections. And this change has been done, if you can tell me, this change was being done through which amendment? It has been asked by the CLAT examination many times. It was 61st Constitutional Amendment Act of the year 1988. So 61st Constitutional Amendment Act 1988 lowered the age from 21 years to 18 years, right? So this also must be kept in mind. Article 326 is also very important. It is a constitutional article. It's being mentioned there, and the right to vote comes from Article 326. So we are clear that elections are being held in India by Article 324 and the Representation of People's Act. Representation of People's Act. See, students, this explanation would also, clarify you many concepts. When I say Representation of People's Act, Act means a legislature formed of the Parliament. Act itself means something which is formed by either the Parliament or the State Legislative Assembly, right? And any act is technically called as statute, right? And therefore Representation of People's Act is a statute because it is a law of the Parliament, right? Now various Representation of People's Act were being formulated. After this, I'll just clarify you by making you understand the other aspects. Students, we know that Indian Constitution was adopted on the date 26th November 1946. So this was the day of adoption and enactment of the Constitution, and the preamble also says the same thing. The Constitution of India was adopted and enacted on 26th November 1946, right? And mind you, on this date itself, many provisions of the Constitution did came into existence. So it is not that it is only 26th January 1950 that the Constitution came into being. Even many provisions like that of citizenship, that of elections, that of provisional parliament, they all came into existence they all came into being right on 26 November 1946. And therefore the preamble reads that on this day of 26 November 1946, we do hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves the Constitution of India, right? And that is the reason why the Representation of People's Act came even before the formulation of Parliament, because Parliament was formed only in the year 1952, but you had the first Representation of People's Act in the year 1950, right? And that was an act coming from the provisional parliament. Are you getting? And also we have understood that elections also came from 1946 onwards, right? Now, having understood this, our base is clear and set to actually, answer the questions which would come. We also know that the major part of the Constitution, came into being from 26 January 1950, right? And because the elections was as a entity was always there in the origin, right from 1946, so therefore Election Commission of India was set up on the date of 25th January 1950, even before the commencement of the Constitution, right? Because this day is called as the commencement of Constitution of India, right? So you can see clearly that even before 26 January 1950, the day prior to 26 January 1950, the Election Commission of India was already being there, because the elections did came into existence right in the year 1940. So here the date, there is some confusion. Here the date is 1949, 1946 was the day of the setting up of the Constituent Assembly. So here please correct yourself. The year is 1949, the day of the enactment of the Constitution. The year is 1949 and not 1946. So please clarify this. Now the Election Commission of India came into being on 25th January 1950, and the same day, students, today is being celebrated as National Voters Day. So 25th January 1950 was the establishment of the Election Commission of India, which is a constitutional body, and we celebrate every year 25th January as National Voters Day, or NVD, and we have been celebrating it since 25th January 2011. The examiner might also ask you the question, what is the theme of National Voter Day for the year 2022, right? So they may ask you the theme of the National Voters Day of 2022, right? So now we are clear about the Election Commission of India and how it was being set up on 25th January 1950. Now moving ahead. Now, as a student said that the Election Commission of India gets its power from Article 324 and Representation of People's Act. Now, Representation of People's Act is an act of the Parliament, and they were being created to conduct the elections to the country, right? To also, find out any malpractices in the elections or in the election process. Any disputes or doubt with regard to elections are also being decided by these acts. Now the first Representation of People's Act, and mind you, RPA is being formed under Article 327, because 327 empowers the Parliament to form such acts which would be used to regulate and conduct the elections to the country, right? Because we know that Election Commission of India is being tasked for the elections of, you all know it, the President, Vice President, Parliament. Parliament means both the houses, Lok Sabha plus Rajya Sabha. Then you have the state legislative assemblies, also in Hindi we call Vidhan Sabhas, and the state legislative councils, right? So the Election Commission of India conducts the election to President, Parliament, Vice President, state legislative assemblies and state legislative councils, right? Now RPA is being set up under Article 327, and the first RPA was RPA of the year 1950, right? Representation of People's Act 1950, correct? So you can see that even before the formation of the Parliament, because Parliament was being formed in the year 1952, so even before that, in 1950, RPA, or Representation of People's Act, came into existence, right? Now the second RPA came in the year 1951, a very important act, and mind you, it was being passed by Dr. Ambedkar. It was being initiated by Dr. Ambedkar, B.R. Ambedkar, right? And then almost after every 15-20 years you do have the Representation of People's Act. For example, Representation of People's Act 1966, then you have Representation of People's Act 2013, then you have RPA Amendment Bill 2016, right? So these are many acts also called as the Representation of People's Act. Now coming to the mood of the question, now when we know that the voter ID would be linked to Aadhaar, now in doing so you are actually identifying the voters. You would be actually identifying the details of the voters when you connect the voter ID with the Aadhaar card, right? And in doing so you cannot just just change like that. You have to change the Representation of People's Act, and in doing so the section 23 of RPA would be changed, right? So this you have to keep in mind, right? So when you're linking Aadhaar with the voter ID, you have to changed section 23 of the Representation of Peoples Act. Now the government actually thinks that when they would link the Aadhaar with the voter ID, in this way they would be able to eliminate any case of deduplication. Deduplication is an issue in India which the Election Commission is facing, where the same voter is being enrolled into various constituencies, right? You must have seen that a voter is being voting at the village, and at the same time the same person is being voting in the urban area, right? So in order to eliminate such duplications, this bill is being circulated by the government in the parliament. Similarly, it would also it also has a provision of being changing the dates of the qualification to become the registered electoral voter. For example, because today students, we know that in order to be a eligible voter you have to be 18 years of age, right? And many voters who have turned 18, they were also being declared ineligible because the date of qualification was being kept as 1st January. The date is being kept as 1st January, and that is the reason why many voters are able to are turned 18 years of age, but then also they are not qualified as a registered voter by the Election Commission of India, because you have just one date, right? Now the government is also changing the dates, and they're saying that 4 dates must be used. That means the first 4 days, that's in the first day of the month of January, right? And then April, that means after every 4 months, right? February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, right? So for the 4 months, they are saying that the first day of every month would be counted as a day for the qualification of being a voter or a registered voter in the country. So instead of one date, now you are having 4 dates, right? So that would actually increase the voter base in the country, right? So these are the important details. Third, it also talks about gender neutrality. Means earlier it was being said that the wives of service person, now the word wives is being replaced by the word spouse. So it is more gender neutral, right? So you are not actually hinting any person with gender, but you are just saying the name of spouse, right? And service person is a category of person who are like the armed personals in deputed on any post on any service outside the state, or any government employee working outside the country, right? So those are called as service persons. So the wives of them are now would be called as spouse. So in this way it has become more gender neutral, right? So these are the 3 objectives of the government. Now it has been criticized heavily by the opposition parties. They say that you cannot link Aadhaar with voter ID because Aadhaar itself has been declared as non-mandatory by the Supreme Court of India. And because if you are linking Aadhaar with the voter ID, there is a possibility of leaking of information, right? Because we don't have a Data Protection Act. It is still a bill under deliberation. We don't have Data Protection Act, right? And in the absence of Data Protection Act, there is huge possibility of the data of these citizens being leaked to many other parties and to many other agencies. So therefore the opposition is criticizing this bill. I hope you understood this. Now we'll come to the passage, and so that we are able to solve the questions. Now coming to the passage, as you have all solved this question already in your exam, you are clear that the current Chief Election Commissioner, now mind you, there are the Election Commission of India today is a 3-member body. It consists of Chief Election Commissioner plus 2 election commissioners, right? So it is basically a 3-member body, Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissioners, right? Now the CEC is being appointed by the president. However, he can be removed only on the same ground and the same procedure as that of the judge of the Supreme Court, right? So in this sense, there is a security of tenure. Right, and there are 2 election commissioners. Now the question says that, ask this, who is the current Chief Election Commissioner of India? The correct answer is Sushil Chandra, right? He is an IAS officer, a senior IAS officer, and he is at present the Chief Election Commissioner for India. Mind you, it's a 3-member body, consists of Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissioners. As I said, that Chief Election Commissioner has a security of tenure. That means he cannot be removed on the whims and fancies of the executive or on the whims and fancies of the president, right? He would be removed only on the same ground as that of the judge of the Supreme Court. That means 2/3 of the majority of present and voting in the parliament, right? So in this sense, Chief Election Commissioner has a security of tenure. But you would be surprised to learn that the election commissioners do not have any security of tenure. I mean, the process which is being led for the judge is same as that for the CEC, but no such process is being given for the election commissioners. And the constitution is also silent. It clearly it is silent, you know. And the convention is that the Chief Election Commissioner would recommend the President of India if at all there is some change in the election commissioner. So in this sense, it is surprising, and the constitution is silent over that. And as I keep on saying in my class, that wherever the constitution is silent, the lawyers fill the gap. And that is the reason why law is the most prized profession in the country. And if you talk about the Western nations, in America, medical and law is the topmost professions in their country, right? So therefore, lawyers are, because the law lies in the mind of the lawyers, right? And you lawyers would fill this gap, would interpret in your own way, and make the things possible, right? So this is the first answer for this question. Coming to the second question. Right. Now, which of the following statements with regard to the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021 is incorrect? Now, the word incorrect is to be, is very important, because we know that we have to find the wrong statement, right? And many students get into confusion when they read these statements. You just have to find the incorrect. The best way to answer these questions, maybe you just pick the right option. The bill seeks to link the electoral roll data and voter ID cards with the Aadhaar ecosystem is a right. So, but you don't have to put a right over here, because you have to find the wrong statement, right? So it is a correct statement. The language for registration of wives of service voters will now be replaced by spouse. This will make the law more gender neutral, correct? According to the bill, 6 qualifying dates will be declared for updating the voting rolls. We know that there are no 6 qualifying dates. Instead, there are 4, right? So here itself we have found the answer. To include those who have turned 18, the first day of January, March, and the months are also wrong, right? And so this is the right answer, because this is the incorrect one, and the question is asking to find you out the incorrect option among the following. I hope it is clear, right? Moving to the next question. The recently passed, as you can see on the screen, the recently passed Election Laws Bill 2021 seeks to amend which of the following articles of the Constitution? Is it amending 324? No. Is it amending Article 32 of RPA 1954? No, because RPA cannot have article, because as I have clearly said, students, that RPA is an statute, it's the act of the parliament. So act of the parliament cannot have articles. Are you getting? Article 342 of the Constitution of India? No. Section 23 of the Representation of Peoples Act 1950 is the right answer. Why? Because we have learned that it has to amend Representation of Peoples Act 1950, and we also have understood that RPA 1950 was the first such act passed by the parliament, or by the provisional parliament to be specific, because the parliament came into being only in the year 1952. So the correct answer for this question is option B. I hope that you marked the correct answer. Moving ahead, UIDAI is tasked with issuing Aadhaar to all the eligible residents of India. Now we know that Aadhaar as a identification came into being from a agency or authority set up by the government of India called as Unique Identification Development Authority of India, and who is recently being appointed as the CEO of UIDAI. So you all know the answers because it is something which is very much in the news. The answer to this question is Saurabh Garg, as we have discussed. Possibly you might be knowing this answer after reading the newspapers. Moving to the next question, it is fairly easy because it's a direct question. Which of the following is popularly regarded as the Aadhaar judgment which disallow the use of Aadhaar numbers? Now students, it is a moot question because Aadhaar is actually, actually includes your details, your private details, and we know that privacy is today a fundamental right under Article 21, right? We know Article 21 is the right to life and liberty, and it has been right to privacy has been interpreted as a part of Article 21 by Justice Puttaswamy case. So in Justice Puttaswamy versus Union of India, it was being held by Supreme Court that right to privacy is an integral part of Article 21, and if a person is being deprived of his privacy, it is a clear infringement or violation of Article 21, right? So clearly it asks that the Aadhaar judgment which disallowed the use of Aadhaar number by private entity, which case was it? So it is clear that it was Justice K.S. Puttaswamy and versus Union of India case, right? So here we are able to actually solve the question. Now my idea behind explaining the things is to have a comprehensive idea, because you cannot solve the question, and mind you, if you know the background of the passage, even you don't have to read the passage. Definitely I would suggest you to read the passage, right? But then you have to been consistent reader, right? You have to read the newspapers, right? So that you have the background information so that you can easily solve the questions. Moving to the next passage. It talks about the Right to Freedom of Religion Bill 2021. Before that, we would jump to another passage. All right, so we'll solve this question. Now it talks about the Lok Sabha speaker who has launched a mobile app which would include all the live telecast and of the parliamentary proceedings. It would also include some parliamentary papers and the important documents. So it has been launched by the speaker of the Lok Sabha, right? Now the question which is being there on the screen, the presiding officer of the Lok Sabha is known as the speaker. Who is the current speaker of the 17th Lok Sabha? Now students, we know that now before I jump into this explanation, I'll just explain a bit about the Indian Parliament. And this would create a base for you to understand the other concepts. Now students, we know that the constitution came into being on 26 November 1949, and elections and citizenship was one of the provisions of 1949 constitution, the original constitution, right? And based on those provisions, the elections were conducted in India, right? So the first general elections, I would say the first general election, and mind you, these elections were that for the parliament as well as for all the state legislatures. So the first general election started in the month of October 1951 and it went up till February 1952. Now it took around 5 months to hold the first general elections because we didn't have the technology like VVPATs and some other advanced technology that we use in these days, right? So therefore it was a long exercise. It got culminated in the month of February 1952, right? And the first, so the state legislative assemblies elections were also being held simultaneously. So the first Rajya Sabha was set up on 3rd of April 1952. Very important details, students, and mind you, these have been asked by the CLAT examination in the year 2018. So therefore, it is very, very important. Soon after that, the first I would say the first Lok Sabha was set up on 17th April 1952, the same month, right? The same year, same month. And you can remember by a mnemonic, we know that the money bill can be held by the Rajya Sabha, which is the upper house, for 14 days, right? So Rajya Sabha can hold the money bill for maximum period of 14 days. Post that, it would be considered to be as passed in the form originally passed by Lok Sabha. So you just add 14 here and you'll get to 17th, right? So this is how you can, learn and memorize the dates. And it has been asked by the CLAT examination. Therefore, I have explained this. Now, after this, the first elections to President of India, or in fact President of Republic of India, were being held. Because we know, students, that president elections actually the electoral college of the president election includes the members of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, excluding the nominated members, plus the MLAs of all the state assemblies, right? So we know that state assembly elections were already being held. So you had already elected MLAs. They would be electing the president. We already had Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. So you had the MPs who would be electing the president. I'll repeat again, the electoral college of president consists of all the elected members of parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, excluding the nominated members. Number one. Number two, it also includes all the MLAs of the state assemblies and the MLAs of the Union Territory having a state assembly like Delhi, Pondicherry and Jammu and Kashmir. Now we had the election to the state assembly, so the ground was set. So the first election to President of Republic of India was being held on 2nd May 1952. 2nd May 1952, right? And you possibly would be knowing that president actually, gives the special address to the parliament where both the houses, Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, sit together at Central Legislative Assembly, Central Assembly Hall, where both the houses sit together for a meeting and the president delivers his speech. And normally it happens on the, when the first session of the newly constituted Lok Sabha or the first session of every year. So today also the first session of every year, that means the budget session, is being presided by the president of the country, right? And the first session of the newly constituted Lok Sabha is also being presided by the President of India, right? So I repeat again, there are two occasions when the president addressed the parliament sitting together, assembled together. Now it is different from joint sitting, because joint sitting is being mentioned under Article 108 of the Constitution. So it is just special. It is just a joint session. Joint session is different from joint sitting. Are you getting? So joint session of the parliament is being addressed by the president on the first instances, the first session of the newly constituted Lok Sabha and the first session of every year, right? So the president did the special address of the parliament where both the Lok Sabha plus Rajya Sabha met together or sat together for the first time. They met together for the first time, and it was being asked by the CLAT examination 2018. So in the year 2018, they asked you the question that on which among the following dates Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha sat for the first time or met for the first time, right? So the question was, when was Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha met together or met for the first time, right? And they met for the first time on students, on 13th May 1952. Now you may be wondering that why sir is actually giving up these details or the dates. It is very hard to remember, but it has been asked by the CLAT authorities. There is a possibility of them being asked again, right? And I've given you the mnemonic also. Rajya Sabha, add 14 days, you will arrive at 17th April, right? Now 14 minus 3 is 11, right? We know that election of the president was on the 2nd of May 1952, and we know 14 minus 3 is 11. Add 11 to the 2nd of May and you will arrive at 13th May 1952, the day when Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha met for the first time, and it was asked by CLAT examination in the year 2018. So therefore, these are very important details you can see on the screen. Now we are in the position to actually, understand the actual intricacies of the parliament and the passage. Now, the speaker is the presiding officer of the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of the parliament, and it is a directly elected house, right? It is a directly elected house, and the maximum membership is 550, and it is being asked, it is asking that who is the current speaker of the Lok Sabha. We know the answer, it is Om Birla. It is very easy question. Coming to the next question, which of the following statements is in this regard to the Lok Sabha is incorrect? Now we'll try to understand this. It is popularly known as lower house. Definitely it is known as lower house, and it represents the people of India as a whole because it includes all the directly elected members. So it is a correct statement. The maximum strength of the Lok Sabha is being fixed at 550. We know the maximum strength is 550. 530 members coming from the states or state assemblies, and 20 members coming from the union territories. Although the maximum strength is fixed at 550, but today we have how many members in Lok Sabha? We all know the membership is 543. So we have 543 members in Lok Sabha. Earlier there were 2 seats reserved for Anglo-Indians, but the reservation to Anglo-Indian has been discontinued, right? Has been discontinued, and there is no now seats reserved for Anglo-Indians. So we don't have 545 but 543, the present membership of Lok Sabha. However, the maximum strength is being fixed at 550, out of which 530 members come from the states and 20 from the union territories. It is a correct answer. I mean, this is the correct option, but we have to figure out the incorrect one, right? The representatives are indirectly elected by the people by the way of proportional representation. It is a wrong statement because the Lok Sabha members are directly elected through first past the post, right? It's a directly elected house. That is the reason why it is also being said as popular house, right? So it is all the directly elected members, and it doesn't have indirectly elected members. Mind you, Rajya Sabha has the indirectly elected members. So this is the wrong option, and this is your answer. Earlier, the president also nominated 2 members from Anglo-Indians. I've just mentioned that earlier the Anglo-Indians were being nominated, but now there is no reservation being given to the Anglo-Indians. It has been discontinued, and the present membership is 543. Right. So therefore, when you're reading the passage, you have to read between the lines, and they may ask you the questions with regard to some static information, right? So therefore, don't think that they would not be asking the questions from the static current affairs. Now moving to the next question. The first Lok Sabha was constituted on 17th April 1952 after India's first general elections. We have understood it that the first Lok Sabha was on 17th April. The first Rajya Sabha was on 3rd of April. We add 14 days and will arrive at 17th April 1952, and therefore the correct answer is definitely this is the right statement. Now the question is asking who was chosen as the first speaker of the Lok Sabha. So the first speaker of the Lok Sabha was G.V. Mavalankar, and the first chairperson of Rajya Sabha is nothing but the Vice President of India, and the first Vice President would be the first chairperson of Rajya Sabha, and S. Radhakrishnan is the first chairperson of Rajya Sabha, right? So this is how we have solved this question. Now recently we know that Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha TV have been merged into Sansad TV to avoid the financial burden resulting from duplicacy of efforts. Right, they have been merged together. Now the question is asking who was the head of the committee which recommended this merger, right? So the answer to this question, it was in the news because it is a recent development. The answer is A. Surya Prakash, right? Now because there was duplicacy of efforts, you had 2 channels for the parliament, because we are a bicameral legislature, Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, right? Now when the parliament is in its session, during the proceedings of the parliament, they would be having separate channels, mind you, because parliament meets thrice a year. The constitution says that the maximum gap between any 2 parliamentary proceedings cannot be more than 6 months. So, and based on this fact, the parliament has to meet at least twice a year, right? So constitution clearly says that the maximum gap between the two sessions of the parliament must not exceed 6 months. So by this logic, at least it should meet twice a year, right? But the parliament actually conducts 3 sessions in a year. The first is the budget session, the second is the monsoon session, and the third is the winter session, right? Now whenever the parliament is having its session, because the two houses runs its proceedings separately, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So when the parliament is in its session, we would be having 2 separate channels, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And when the parliament is not in session, that means during the recess time, when the parliament is not in session, it is called as recess time. Are you getting? Recess time. And during the recess time, there is no need of having 2 different channels. So therefore the two would be merged together and would be called as Sansad TV in Sansad TV, and this would eliminate the duplicacy of efforts and the resources, because they are again putting a burden over the government of India, right? So I'll repeat again, when the parliament is session, because Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha would be having separate proceedings, you would be having separate channels, Lok Sabha TV and Rajya Sabha TV. But during the recess time, when the parliament is not in session, they would be clubbed together in something called as Sansad TV. I hope it is clear. And the committee which recommended this merger was being headed by A. Surya Prakash. It was very much in the news. Coming to the next question, who has been appointed as the CEO of the newly created Sansad TV for a term of 1 year? And it has been in the question and also been given in the current affairs handouts being given to you and explained in the classes. The answer we all know is a fairly easy question, Ravi Kapoor. Now coming to the next question, the next passage, passage 6. It talks about the extension of the tenure of CBI and Enforcement Directorate, right? We know that President has promulgated 2 ordinances that would, increase the tenure of the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI. They are the investigation agencies in India, from 2 years to up to 5 years, right? That means earlier the tenure was 2 years and it was a fixed tenure, and now it can be increased up to 5 years, right? With 3 annual extensions. For example, 2 years would be a fixed tenure. So just be on the board. We know that 2 years is a fixed tenure for the chief of or the director of CBI as well as Enforcement Directorate, right? Now it can be stretched up to 5 years as per the new ordinance. It is ordinance. So that means after every 2 years there would be extension, and that extension would be for 1 year, right? So therefore it says that it can now be given 3 annual extensions, right? So 2 years is a minimum, right? It's a fixed term. Now after the completion of 2 years, 1 year extension would be given, right? Then again a 1 year extension would be given up to 5 years, right? But it must not exceed 5 years, right? So there can be 3 annual extensions, right? Definitely the government is very clear that they want to have their own man in the helm of the affairs, right? Because the director of the CBI and ED is being generally, being appointed by the central government. So therefore there is always interference of executive in their functioning, and it is the reason why they are being heavily criticized. Now before we try to solve this question, I'll just give you a brief explanation of the same. Now student, we have learned that the director of CBI and Enforcement Directorate, earlier the fixed term was 2 years, and now it would be extended up to 5 years. Now in this context we have to understand a bit about CBI and Enforcement Directorate. Now CBI, or Central Bureau of Investigation, was an investigation agency set up by the government of India, right? And it derives its powers from Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of the year 1946. Now mind you, this act was a pre-independence act. That means it came into being even before independence, right? Now CBI derives its powers from DSPE, right? However, CBI was being, formed by the central government in the year 1963 on the recommendation of Santhanam Committee formed in the year 1962, and it gave its recommendations in the year 1964. So many recommendations were being given, and one such recommendation was with regard to the investigating agency, or also called as Central Bureau of Investigation. Now, because it derived its powers from Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. It is an act, Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, and CBI derived its powers from this act, as you can see on the screen, and therefore it is not being set up by the Parliament of the country, right? It derived its power from Delhi Special Police Establishment Act, and it was being set up based on the recommendation of Santhanam Committee, right? And that is the reason why it is a non-statutory body. Now students, everything is connected. We have learned that statute is the name for the law of the Parliament, and because it is not being formed by the law of the Parliament, it is a non-statutory body. It is not being formed by the act of the Parliament. Instead, it derived its power from the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, right? Now it investigates various cases with regard to the central government, the state government, and many other agencies, right? It is being headed by a director. A director is there, and in many judgments it was being said by the Supreme Court that CVC, or Central Vigilance Commission would, have a supervisory function or supervisory role over CBI. And one such judgment of Supreme Court which said this was V. Narayanan It was V. Narayan case of Supreme Court, where Supreme Court clearly said that the CVC would have supervisory role over the Central Bureau of Investigation. So we are clear that it is a non-statutory body, and it investigates the cases of the central government and the state government, right? Now, moving to another agency which also has investigative functions, something called as Enforcement Directorate. Or ED. Now, Enforcement Directorate also has an investigative function, but it only looks over the financial disputes or the issues with regard to economy, right? And it today regulates two laws, FEMA and Prevention of Money Laundering Act, right? So FEMA of the 1999 is being regulated by Enforcement Directorate, and Prevention of Money Laundering Act is also being regulated by Enforcement Directorate. So it actually relates to the investigating of the disputes with regard to or cases with regard to economy or finance, right? Enforcement Directorate. And mind you student, it works under the Department of Revenue, Finance Ministry of the Government of India. So it is a potential question, it may be asked in the examination, that Enforcement Directorate works under the aegis of, or works under which among the following? So it is Department of Revenue of Finance Ministry, right? Now if somebody asks you that CBI works under which ministry? Now students, although it was being set up by Ministry of Home Affairs, but today Ministry of Home Affairs is not a regulating agency for Central Bureau of Investigation. Instead, it is being operated by Ministry of Personnel, MOP, Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances, and Pensions. A very important aspect to be understood by the students. CBI works under Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, and there is a department under Ministry of Personnel called as Department of Personnel Training, right? So Department of Personnel Training actually looks into the affair of the CBI. Both CBI and Enforcement Directorate are being headed by the the directors, right? I hope the things are clear. Now we are in the position to solve the question which we have already tried to in our mock test. Now let us come to the first question. The current ED chief. Now it is asking about the current ED chief whose name has been substituted by 1. So the current ED chief, as you all know, is Sanjay Kumar Mishra. A fairly easy question. Now ED is a law enforcement agency of the Government of India that is responsible for enforcing. We have just learned that ED works for the economic laws, right, and does not deal with counter-terrorism or narcotic laws, right? So it is also a fairly easy question if you know a background of Enforcement Directorate. Come to the next question. The CBI is Premier Investigating Agency. Who is the current director of CBI? So the director of CBI, which has been in the news for many a time, the director is Subodh Kumar Jaiswal, right? So it has been asked in various examinations and it is very much there in the news. The chairman or the director of the CBI is Subodh Kumar Jaiswal. Now, which ministry of the Government of India exercises administrative control on CBI? I have clearly made it, I've explained that CBI was although formed, because the student might get confused. It's a typical question and students might get confused between Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Personnel. As I clearly said that it was being created by Ministry of Home Affairs, but today it is being regulated by Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, and there is a department of Ministry of Personnel called as Department of Personnel Training, which actually oversees the CBI. Next question. Which of the following statement with regards to CBI is incorrect? Now we have to find the incorrect statement. So again, the students might end up in marking the wrong question. So here the trick is again the same. You have to find out the right option and then automatically you will be able to arrive at the correct answer. So CBI was set up in 1963. Yes, we have learned this by resolution of Ministry of Home Affairs. Very good. The establishment of CBI was recommended by Santhanam Committee, set up in the year 1962 to 1964, is also right. CBI is not a statutory body. It derives its power from Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946. CBI is the main investigating agency of the central government. We know, student, that it is not a statutory body. Now here many students can mark this option actually thinking that it is a statutory body, but I have cleared it that it derived its power from Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, and it is not a body created by the Parliament. Therefore it is not a statutory body. It is non-statutory body, and the CBI is the main investigating agency of the central government, right? So it is also a right statement because it is not a statutory body. So the correct option would be none of the above, because all the statements are correct. There is no statement which is incorrect as being asked by the question, right? I hope it is clear. Now moving to the next question, students. Now again it is a new passage, and the passage talks about the India-Bangladesh war, or something also called as India-Pakistan war would be more right term to actually understand this passage, or it is also called as Bangladesh Liberation War. We all know that it took place in the year 1971 and with the liberation of Bangladesh. And so there are some questions which are being asked based on this passage. The first question, as there is on the screen, who among the following is the Prime Minister of Bangladesh since January 2009? Now, very famous Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Wajid is the present head of the government of Bangladesh. It is a quite easy question which every student preparing for the law exams know it. The next question, Indo-Pak War of 1971 was a military confrontation that occurred during the Bangladesh Liberation War. What was the name of the operation carried out? You might be knowing about the only person, the army officer who rose to the post, General Sam Manekshaw, right? So he was the topmost army official of the government, and it is on his efforts that India was able to liberate Bangladesh, right? And the name of the operation was Operation Searchlight. So Operation Searchlight was a code name given for the military operation conducted for the liberation of Bangladesh by Indian Army. Now, mind you, student, there are the topmost post in army is called by the name of Field Marshal, and there have been only 2 army officials till date to achieve that position. The first was Field Marshal Manekshaw, which was involved in 1971 war, and second is Field Marshal Marshal K. Cariappan, right? So there are only 2 army officials in the Indian Army to achieve the post of Field Marshal. The next question, India celebrates Vijay Diwas to commemorate its victory over Pakistan in 71 war, which led to the liberation of Bangladesh. Now the day is 16th of December, is being celebrated as Vijay Diwas to commemorate our win over Bangladesh, or our win over Pakistan, which was the East Pakistan then. Now the question is, which of the following military exercises is being conducted between India and Bangladesh? Now students, it was very much in news, it was being talked about, and the correct answer to this question is Shantir Ugrasena. But the question doesn't end here, because it is a recent development and there is high possibility of it being asked in the examination. The examiner might grill you that, because it was, mind you, a 4-nation military exercise. It was a 4-nation military exercise, joint military exercise by 4 nations, which included India, definitely Bangla, Sri Lanka, and the Royal Bhutan Army, that means Bhutan. So these were the 4 nations which were involved in the joint military exercise. Also, it was being codenamed by Shantir Ugrasena, right? So therefore, they may ask you these questions on joint military exercises, or the joint naval and the joint Air Force exercises. So the answer to this is Shanti Ugrasena. And if you can tell me some another military exercise where India and Bangladesh jointly conducts the military exercise, there is one exercise by the name of Sampriti. Very important joint military exercise between India and Bangladesh. I hope it is clear. Moving to the next question, as you can see on the screen, which Indian poet, students, composed the national anthem of Bangladesh? Now, because Bangladesh was East Pakistan, and prior to East Pakistan, I mean, it was a part of India, right? But after partition, it got separated and it went into the hands of Pakistan. It became East Pakistan, right? And therefore, the national anthem for Bangladesh, because the language there in Bangladesh spoken is Bangla, and the national anthem of Bangladesh is being composed by Sir Rabindranath Tagore, right? And the national anthem, which you all would be knowing, Amar Shona Bangla. So in Bengali, it is Amar Shona Bangla. It is the national anthem for Bangladesh, and it is being composed by Rabindranath Tagore. I hope it is clear. Right. So these are the passages that we discussed. Now we'll jump into those passages which we left earlier. So we all discussed these. Now, yeah. Now there are some important passages which are still to be complete, and we'll try to finish it up soon. Now, this passage talks about the Right to Freedom of Religion Bill 2021, and this has been in the news, and it was the center of controversy because it was a bill, being promulgated by the Parliament of, by the State Assembly of one particular state. Now, it is a very controversial bill which states that no person shall convert or attempt to convert, either directly or otherwise, any person, from one religion to another by the use of force, coercion, undue influence, misinterpretation, misrepresentation, coercion, allurement, etc. So all the fraudulent means to convert a person into a different religion are being banned by the government, right? So the question is saying that which of the following, which state has passed this act, anti-conversion law? We all know that the answer is Karnataka, because it was very much in the news. Now, which state was enacted the first anti-conversion legislation in the year 1967? If you are an avid reader of the newspapers, you will be able to take the correct option. And the answer is Odisha. So Odisha was the first state to have such kind of law or anti-conversion law. Now, which of the following statements with regard to recently enacted Karnataka Protection of Right to Freedom of Religion Bill 2021 is incorrect? Now let us talk about the same. We have to find the incorrect option. The complaints of conversions can be filed by family members or relatives or any person in association with that person. It is a correct statement. Not the notice period to the district magistrate for the religious conversion is 2 months. No students, it is not 2 months. It has been just 30 days. That means 1 month. So this is the incorrect option. So this is how the examiner, asks the questions. So you have to be, a prolific reader. You have to read between the lines, and the data and the facts must also be very, very clear. So the answer is not 2 months. Instead, it is 1 month. So the correct answer is option B, because it is the incorrect option, and the question is asking about the incorrect option. Not informing the district magistrate will lead to the conversion being declared null and void. Definitely you have to inform the district magistrate. The offense of conversion is cognizable and non-bailable offense. Definitely such offense of conversion is cognizable and it is non-bailable. Coming to the next question. Which of the following is a landmark judgment of the Supreme Court through which it held that the matters of ideas and ideologies of love and partnership are within the central aspects of identity, and neither the state nor the law can dictate a choice of partners? So it was a very famous judgment in the Hadiya case. So the answer is Hadiya Judgement 2017, right? So the Hadiya Judgement 2017 was very famous because the court clearly said that no law or no state can dictate a choice of partner or limit the free ability of every person to decide on these matters. That means still the marriages, inter-religious marriages are very much legal, provided that they are not done through coercion, force, intimidation, or misrepresentation. Now it's a very easy question on the screen. The article which talks about the freedom of conscience and free profession, that is the our right to freedom. The answer to this question is, you all know, Article 25. Now recently we are coming to the next passage. There are 2 passages left, and then we'll finish up the class. The passage on the screen talks about a bridge being built over Mahanadi River, right? And mind you, it is east flowing river. Possibly if you would be knowing it, I just gave a brief background on this. Because generally the examiner do ask questions with regard to the rivers, and I'll just in another few minutes I'll explain the things. Now we know that there are west flowing rivers and east flowing rivers, and it is the peninsular India. Here you have Arabian Sea, and here you have Bay of Bengal. This class will be discussing about the east flowing rivers, right? This is east and this is west, we all know. Now the peninsular rivers to flow towards east in Bay of Bengal is Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, right? So they all are east flowing rivers, and they drop their water in Bay of Bengal, right? Now, and these are, mind you, arranged in the direction from north to south, right? So Mahanadi to south, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri. Now the longest peninsular river of India is Godavari. It is also called as Dakshin Ganga, right? It is the longest peninsular river, right? Now the questions are being asked over the dams being built over these rivers. Now over Mahanadi you have a very famous dam called as Hirakud Dam, right? Similarly over Kaveri you have Krishna Rajasagar Dam, you have Metro Dam, over which Stanley Reservoir is being built. And similarly, there are many other dams on other rivers. So these are the important dams. Now, so I hope it is clear, and the question is also on these lines. Let us go to the questions. Now, recently, so the state government has built the longest bridge over Mahanadi in Cuttack, and it would connect Gopinathpur in Bedeshwar to Singhnath Pitha, located in the middle of the river, and it has been built in the shape of an English letter, right? Now, the question asks that who is the current Chief Minister of Odisha? It's a fairly easy question. All the students know that the answer is Naveen Patnaik. It's the present Chief Minister of the state of Uttar Pradesh. Coming to the second question, which of the following is the longest dam in the world also built in Odisha across Mahanadi, right? So it is the longest dam in the world in that sense, in terms of length. In terms of length, it is the longest dam being built, and the correct answer is Hirakud Dam. We just learned that Hirakud Dam is being built on the Mahanadi River. The next question, from the given options, identify the recently inaugurated which is Odisha's longest bridge. So that means it is asking about the longest bridge which is being built over Mahanadi, which is being inaugurated by the Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik, and the name of the bridge is T Setu. T Setu is the correct answer, and it is fairly easy question, a direct question which every student would be able to answer. The next question, which of the following wildlife sites are in Odisha? Now we know, students, Kaziranga is in Assam. We all know. We also know that Gadimata Marine Sanctuary is very, very famous. It is for olive ridley. It is famous for olive ridley turtles. They are endangered species, and it is somewhere near Chilika Lake. Chilika Lake is a lagoon. It is a saltwater lake in India, in Odisha, and you have Gadimata Marine Sanctuary built in Odisha, which conserves and preserves the olive ridley turtles, which are endangered species as per IUCN list. So the answer to this question is Gadimata Marine Sanctuary. It is also fairly easy question. Bandhavgarh is in MP, right? Now moving ahead, Odisha government has decided to sponsor which game for the Indian team? We all know that it is Odisha government which sponsored hockey, and mind you, hockey also we won in the Olympics recently held in Japan, and we won bronze medal. The hockey men's team won the bronze medal after a wait of many years. So it is fairly easy question. So we have done passage 4 also. Now we are left with one passage, if I am not wrong. Yes. Now the first passage which in my lecture I have put into the last passage. The first passage talks about the defense details, the defense news. Now recently the Ministry of Defense has its agency called as DRDO, Defense Research Development Organization, which is headquartered at New Delhi. Now they have launched the conventional ballistic missile, and they're asking what is the name for that conventional ballistic missile. As you can see, it was being launched. It has a range of 150 to 500 kilometers from the Abdul Kalam Island off the coast of Odisha, right? So with the payload, etc., has also been mentioned. The correct answer for this was very much in the news, is Pralay. The second question is, it asks that which type of missile it is. Is it a surface to surface? That surface to surface missiles means those missiles which are being exploded on the surface, which are launched from the surface, and they explode on some other other location on the same surface, right? So those are called surface to surface missiles. Or is it a surface to air missile, launched from the surface and it explodes in the air? For example, Trishul, Akash, right? Trishul is a surface to air. Akash is a surface to air. Agni missile is surface to surface. Prithvi missile by my name is also surface to surface, right? So we have to understand the capability and the missiles, right? And there are many questions being asked in the examination. So it is asking that which type of missile is Pralay. So the correct answer is surface to surface missile. There is nothing to explain. It is was there in the news, right? So Pralay, which is being launched recently, is also a surface to surface missile. I hope it is clear. Going to the next question. With the following statement with regards to the missile, Pralay missile, is incorrect. Again, we have to find the incorrect statement. Is it a solid fuel battery field missile developed by DRDO based on the design of Prithvi defense vehicle from Indian ballistic missile program? Yes, it is clearly given in the passage. It is powered with a solid propellant, rocket motor and other new technologies. The missile includes state-of-the-art navigation and integrated avionics. Correct. The advanced missile has been developed in a way to be able to defeat interceptor missiles. It has the ability to change its path after covering the certain range mid-air. So it is also very clear, right? So all the options are correct, right? So that means there is no incorrect option and the correct answer is none of the above. Moving to the next question. Who is the current chairman of DRDO? It is a one-liner question, a straight question from the news. The answer is G. Satish Reddy is the correct answer. And so this is the correct answer for this question. And the next question, where is the headquarters of DRDO located? Again, it's fairly easy question. It is in New Delhi, right? So here we have covered all the questions in our mock test series. I hope you enjoyed the content. And again, students, from my experience, I can advise you that you must be consistent in newspaper reading. So be very consistent in newspaper reading and do not rely or depend on the ready-made current affairs material being available on online mediums or provided by the institute, right? So there is no substitute for the newspaper reading. Be avid newspaper reader, and this is the only key to excel in the examination. I hope you enjoyed the session, and this is Prithviraj Singh signing out. Thank you very much. Good day. God bless you. Bye.